is beginning into practice. I like to call this one twists and turns. And it's starting with a very fundamental pattern to open up through the legs, but the elongation of the core chamber is a busy project to begin with, okay? So let's start with our seat next to the bolster, which is across the mat behind you. And you'll start your project. This is project week for your poses. You'll put your blocks under the legs and they're mid to high height. Take a belt, buckle it up so it's in a wide loop overhead around your feet, and then loosen it enough so it's easy support at the very lower back. And so it feels as if you were to push your thumbs in the belt to your bolster. Like if you were to try to touch there, the belt is that low that you could touch back to your bolster. Okay, that may be a completely unnecessary thing to mention, but I want you to feel that when you lower back, you have your sandbag nearby, and it's a bit of an approach that you need to find that's appealing to your back. So I'm going to lift up the blocks so they contour around my underbelly of my side leg. And then as I lean back, I'm expecting to have support soon, although it's not quite there yet. So when I lower my head back, if I feel when the arms spread open that the trapezius, right, that upper back muscle that actually is attached at your occiput, so it's all the way up into the brain material that it attaches, right, and the front of that, or in the back, but it's over the tissues. You want to feel that the shoulders could gradually glide to releasing. Okay, so at first, if that's too much for your neck, you can either roll up the blanket that's on top, right? Kind of position that so it scoops up under your head. That might be enough. You could stay with it and see how it releases, as long as it's not a real nag to you. And you could also add a towel or a little pillow. Position the sand on the ribs so it's across where the ribs intersect. And as the arms move out, it's a sensation that I'm trying to elongate across. So it's like you're in the shape of a cross, isn't it? With your core to your navel and then outwards through the branches of the arms. So fundamentally, feel where your feet touch together. Study the pairs of things in your body that are trying to balance. So that includes knees, thighs, buttocks. The things that are not in pairs, right, are core organs. So you're trying to let this be a very narrow channel with the sand on the top of that space to conveniently massage into the organs when you breathe. Rest your eyes, deepen the breath inwards, and let the breath relax out of the body. But truly consider the motionary patterns of the felt sense of the ribs moving and starting to acclimate to your nose drawing the oxygen in through the nasal passageways, right? Feeling the nostrils pulling that in, and then exhaling out of the mouth. Seems a rather simple exercise to breathe, but we're coordinating the breath with the core. It's a true coordination. Feeling the abdomen rise and feeling it relax back. So integrating the legs, the hips, the low back warming up. The belt really does give some traction to your legs and your lumbar spine. Okay, so with these moments to study ahead for another minute or so, can you move your shoulders back into the bolster, like you're actually trying to kind of hug the bolster. The arms are wonderful to have here around the sides of the bolster because that retracts back. And then the heart kind of surfs up. Well, in some ways it does. It kind of surfs upwards and flows. So starting to transition from wherever you were before class psychologically into the present moment, into your practice. Breathing for a count of 4 and exhaling for a count of 5. You know, maintain this challenging pattern with the upper core, okay? And what we'll do is we're gonna unbuckle the belt, and if you can slide the belt off of the legs, the front side legs, the back of the body, it's not a big issue, but when you move your knees towards each other, I want you to reach to get one block, so you have a support. One block is plenty. And then push into your feet and lift up the buttocks and slide the block under the back of your pelvis, under your pelvis, so that that hip pattern that was just arching pretty deeply in the lumbars is centered up on a neutral spine, okay? Keep your pack on the ribs. You might touch onto it with both of your hands, and then with the feet relatively hips distance, you're going to bring the right knee in towards your chest. So you're actually getting quite a swing of the back muscles. And then as you alternate this step and knee in towards the chest, feel that frequency in the lower back lengthen. Okay, so we'll take this a few moments. And rather than this being a transition phase only to move from this beginning pose, feel that it's a linking and a traction, right, for your spine and for the focus. So if I'm doing some movement and coordination, my mind has something to kind of train the breath to work with. So I want to feel like I can comfortably breathe. And whether you exhale when the knee goes in or when the foot goes down, my tendency would be inhale, knee in, exhale, foot down. Okay, last time. Whichever side you're on is the right side or the left side. Okay, so feel the roots of the toes and feel that you're on the toes, so the heels are up. Now, you slide your sand over to your left. We'll keep everything very coordinated today with direction. And then when you tilt left, I want you to try to roll from that support and push the block out to the side, and then start to let your ribs shift down on the bolster. And then consider this pattern, that my blanket is under my brain, not my shoulders. So I'm going to just kind of nudge it a little farther back. So there's this space between the bolster and the blankets, so that when I set up for side sage, we're taking these and twist and turn, so trying to glide through the set. Place a ball under the inside of that right knee, and then add a sandbag to the exterior side, and that could be anywhere. It could be ribs, it could be hip. If you have a couple bags, you could add one on each zone, hip and ribs. But if that left leg feels that the hip bone on that thigh is digging in, then use your energy in your back to guide that left knee higher up to the bolster, not on top of it, but so that the hip bone doesn't jut into the floor, okay? You know, we've been used to doing the side sage sometimes with a blanket under our thigh, under our hip, right? So you can always add those props. But for this consideration, we're going to work on rising up with that right limb, the whole right limb package, right? It's like you have these opposing limbs on the right side that you're feeling move away from the middle. And then as that right arm reaches, if you get here and you lower your hand and it's a strain on your shoulder, what you'll be needing, you'll need a block, right, to place under that hand. Now, if that is too much there, bring the arm open and let it rest behind you, or let it rest on the bolster. So all things relative to the limbs exchange and reach. Let's find a still point. Go into the shape that you've chosen and stay. And after you've headed into the pose that you've chosen, the direction and the angle, noticing if the weight of the brain can actually relax so that the neck is not holding the head up. I know it does it a lot, huh? So this might be your only opportunity. You can relax your gaze inwards. You might even see how far through the practice you can go with minimal use of the visual field. See if some of the instructions are enough to guide you along with your eyes resting. You're on the floor for the practice, so you shouldn't get into any trouble. So resting the bones around the eyes, or the muscles around the eyes, the nose and the mouth. Now, since the face is on its side, right, your actual face itself, you might turn your head just a tiny bit in towards the blanket. Find where the right hand is calm. Palm has a touchdown or a place that it's resting. A few different options. Now we're going to create a symmetrical pattern for the back, a series that motions into all fours. So as we shift, you might be able to follow with minimal visual, but I would keep an eye on the content so you have an awareness where we're motioning into. But as I move my sand off my right side, we're going to turn to our bolster. So prone, you're going to rotate and you'll guide your right knee in. And as you turn, let's take it the ball aside. Okay. Come to all fours and position your bolster so it's on top of the blankets. Okay. So don't need the belt, but what you're going to focus towards here is your hands, your knees about as, probably not quite as wide as your hands, huh? Because of your props, that's going to set your hands apart. But when you're in this pattern, see if you can let the inner line of your elbows, like the eye of the elbow, so it turns forward. So when I have that hand down, I want to really feel my palm and feel the fluidity in the arm. Okay, kind of play with the hand on the floor and that pressure and the turn of the arm, right? If I have no pressure under my hand, it's really challenging to twist my arm. Twists and turns. It's going to be in the arms too today. So try to maintain that twist of the inner arm open, toes under, lift up the knees, downward dog. So my hands are going to stride forward, and the forehead, right at the hairline, is on my bolster. Now this might not be where your head is. You might be farther up but we don't want to be pushing into the bolster so much that we have it as a crash pad and there's no support in my spine. So I want a tiny bit of support, or I don't have the bolster, one or the other. And then feeling where the arms are reaching, can you center in and have your feet a little wider in this pattern? So you have a wide stance with the legs. Press the floor away. Breathe. Try to let the thighs activate, so the drawing up of the kneecaps. Draw up the quadriceps, the top thighs. And then progress into hands walking back and maybe feet walk a little forward till you find your standing forward fold. Hands on bolster. Head between arms, so it's almost as if it's a downward dog path of circulation, but a whole lot less strain in my shoulders and my wrists. So I'm going to bend the knees, see if I can let my hips wag a little side to side to ease the spinal column, and let the weight of your head drain down. If your arms need to kind of drizzle out whatever is being held up in your shoulders today, you're also welcome to hold onto your elbows instead. And with that elbow snug grip with your hands, it can help cycle that stress out of the shoulders a little bit easier than if my hands are striving and reaching. Okay, but some of us might want that stretch in our back with the arms forward. So give a few moments here. Let the weight of your head stretch your spine. Feel the parting of the knees, so the knees are bending to ease the back muscles. Breathe slow. Empty your lungs. I know there's always this challenge of the neck trying to kind of move forward out of the shell of the back. We're all part turtle. Okay. So you have the opportunity, right, to let your head be part of these twists and turns that we're going through coming up. So in life, so as your hands are going towards floor, walk on forward. That's where they go. Feet on back, knees down. And then what we'll do is we'll change our bolster. We'll bring it back to where it was before. Just take it off of the blanket, turn it back to horizontal. Have the hands under shoulders, stride a little farther forward, round your back into a cat shape, chin to chest. And then actually look back to your thighs and lean them into your bolster. And stretch the chest forward and up in the arch of the back into your shoulders. Come back to table. Round your back, chin to chest, hollow through the belly. And then lean forward so your hips move down and they land comfortably, the front of the thighs on the bolster, and aim for length. If the back is whimpering a little bit with this positioning right here, when you come back, try to feel the turn of the arm, the inner arm, the eye of the arm is turning open. And then I come back, round my spine last time. Now when you come forward this time, lower all the way down. It's quite nice, right? So you're easing back into your shoulders, elbows on the floor, Sphinx pose. Push down to the elbows, the forearms actually, the whole forearm, elbow to wrist. And then press. And notice, is it elbow to wrist or is it wrist to elbow that you push down into? So keep the shoulders centering back and place a moment with your toes under. If the best that you can find is toe hooking under, knees lifting, press back into your heels. Okay, now we'll climb upwards. We'll slide the hands back so they're basically under the shoulder line. And then we'll Lift up the ribs, so stretch, scoop up, chest up, up dog with the toes under. Okay, and then as you glide your knees down, you're going to start to move into side sage with the right hip. So you're going to pivot. So your right knee touches to the left side of the bolster where you're looking. And then you're going to roll into that right hip. And then push the blanket a couple inches up. Enough that you can just put your arm in between the two. Okay? And then once you get your ball, place it on the inside of that left leg. Add your sand, perhaps. Okay? So you have a little bit of a reach of your waist just to get going. And a block could be overhead. If you don't need that, let's say when you lengthen over, you're quite comfortable with your blanket, that's fine. But feel the features of the extremities and how this amounts to elongating the core chamber, the intercostals, hydrating, right? So you want to get a feeling of stretching those mid muscles, the mid muscles. Hand on blanket or block, scoot the right thigh up as much as you need to feel cozy for your lower back. And let the body belong in this simple structure. Remark on places that you could explore getting a little bit more stimulation and hydration in. So this practice is about improving our circulation, right? Not imposing it on a certain place, but optimizing it throughout the body. So thinking of yourself as a whole. And then as you're reaching with that left hand, touch down or bring it behind you or down to the bolster. It's okay to find the easy way. Kind of navigate through the ribs, the ribbon of the ribs here. Few more moments. Movement might bring quality to your experience versus stillness in some of these pose cycles. So if this one enables you to keep your lower body still from the sandbag down, and your upper body has the breath movement, and maybe your arm decides to move, let that be. And then truly get the feel here of this left side. Okay, so we're gonna stay on this. There's twists and turns in the practice, but we're gonna navigate through intelligent as we can with the sequencing, as I can. Okay. You might be adding in some things on your own, perhaps. Now, if I move my sand away, and I'm going to try to keep this side as a focal point, okay? So we're not really leaving the side work. We're just kind of breaking the shape and then moving it up to a seated shape. So roll into your right side and move the ball over. Let's see, the ball's going to go, let's keep it on the left side of your leg. And then come into a seated pattern. So let's move our blankets in, just kind of tuck them, okay? And then you're gonna take a seat up on your bolster. I'll be kind of angling, similar how you are. I'll be doing same side versus mirroring, so we'll all be doing same side as you. But when you stretch out your right leg, the support under your left bent leg is going to need to be something, even if it doesn't hurt, okay? Even if your knee doesn't have any pain, or even if your knee, let's say it goes to the floor like so. This is kind of an aim in a seated pose, is to get my knee down so that my pelvis is higher than my knee. right? So this can actually have some circulation advantage. Even if I can do that, I opt for the ball, and I slide my left foot a little forward. So it's less of an actual angle at the knee joint, right? Because some of us we have different ranges of motion, and we can articulate deeper pulls, but I don't know how far that gets you with aging in the joint. So we're just going to keep it kind of conservative on that, just basic, easy bend. So sand goes on left side, and I'm going to add a block on the right side. You get to choose. Maybe you're going to use your belt and pull your foot. You can. I'll show you both ways. So twist left, bring your right hand to left knee. If there happens to be enough support behind you, the blanket could be it, a block under the blanket, or sorry, over the blanket. So get a turn of the waist, right? And notice when you rotate, it's different than when you explain, like, I have this much extension in a joint. It's different when you're working with the ribs. So there's always further to go, but if the breath is feeling kind of snagged up and tighter, then you're going too far. So feel where there's a responsible lane of travel of the breath through nose, out of mouth, easy. And then we're going to stretch down to that right leg. So we're going to take the block besides the knee. So I have my block right outside of just below the right knee, outside the calf. And then I bring my elbow down. And my left arm goes up. So we're in the same pose we were recently within, on our side, lying on our bolster. But it's kind of hard to get a sandbag on your ribs here. Okay. So you could take that block and put it up high enough that your elbow could be on it and your head could be in your hand. Blocks are a little bit shifty, they're not completely stable as a table. They're not table stable, but you will find a way to put your weight into it so it's balanced. Okay. So this left arm goes up and over. You can also bring it behind your back. Okay, you choose. Now, if that right foot can flex, I want you to try to push into your right heel and reach through the foot. Okay, this shows you that you could do this with a belt, right? So if you decide you're good with that, stay with that for a few more. If you want to try your belt option, you can reach the belt under the foot and pull, but when you hold with your hand, right, you're utilizing the muscles in that right arm in a concise way right into the bicep. Right, so feel the degree of focus in this lower left quadrant, whether you use the belt or you use the block, right? The block could be even just under your hand, but this left quadrant is where I want you to focus, okay? Now, when we come up, we're going to take the right knee to bending and then position that foot so that in some way it's right beside my left foot, except they're not like meeting, like bound angle, the soles aren't touching. The right foot is on the floor. My left foot, I would like it to tuck in a little further, but it depends on your degree of mobility, doesn't it? So if your angle is comfortable to hook that foot a little closer and try that. Okay, this is a relatively simple process for twisting, but when you turn left, or to the right, sorry, you're going to use this left side of the waist that we were just kind of reaching through, this kind of sore space that might not feel sore right now. So when I turn right, I'm going to reach back to my block and then hook my left elbow outside of that right knee, and I can push into the leg with my left elbow and use that pressure to massage through the mid to upper tummy, right? So it's really this mid-upper tundra of the tummy, like the basin of the ribs that you're twisting, right? It's a little different when the knee is this way versus across your knee, across your other knee. Okay? So take this as an option for a few moments. Twist. Now, if you want a deeper turn, different, maybe deeper, you can take this ball away and cross the right foot over the left knee and then take the twist this way. Okay, so I want you to have a few moments to decide, is my foot on the inside of the left knee or on the outside of the left knee? Elbow hook, twist. Okay. Feel the ritual of rotation, circulation up to the crown of the head. Breathe slow. Okay, now strengthen into your upper back. So when you come back, your back comes back to its kind of generic state of sometimes softness through the back. I want you to come up and actually cross that right foot forward to the left knee. Center yourself, move your sand onto your right upper thigh, and actually get a lift of your block overhead. Stimulate your arms. So you're going to lift both arms to hold the block wide, okay? Bend your elbows, so your elbows are right by the sides of your head-ish, right there close, elbow, motioning in an element. And then try to get the elbows, the wrists are straight back from elbows. And as you're back there, keep moving the elbows back versus trying to move them up higher, just back. Yeah. Now as you lift the arms straight up, keep the hands pushing into that block. Breathe. And then exhale, bend the elbows and keep them motioning into the sides of your head. They probably could never go enough energetically. You can always go further. Now, as you lift up this last time with the block, we're going to come full hip work. So you're going to get both blocks and you're going to move them front. So I have my blocks on the inside layer of my mat and my sand is on my right thigh. If you have two sandbags, you're going to use one on each thigh, right on the upper inner leg. If the ball seems to be helpful, add it in under a knee and then lean so that the arms can reach. Try to go forward and further, but go into it, go into your shape and brain centers down. Yeah, if it's a little sticky in the hip, let the back motion with the breath. Okay, try to stay with the connectivity of the spinal column into the neck. And study as much of that as you can provided here when we link up into the second side. So one way you can be a little bit of a kind of an expert for your self-care might be to go a little slower than I'm guiding, right? You can use the verbal cues to kind of keep you in the program, right? But you might guide yourself slower than I'm kind of stating. So feeling the back wave, kind of the spine in that cat shape, more of a C spine. It's a C-span. Okay, now my right hip has the sand, so this is good news. I'm kind of already set up for the second side. I don't have to overthink it. But what I am going to encourage you to do is to slide any blocks you have in. Yeah, put them out to the side. And then ball away from under the left knee if it was there and stretch out the left leg. Okay, so my right foot could slide in, right? The closer it gets to the bolster, might feel good for you for your inner thigh stretch, for your adductor. And that could be good for where we're going in the practice today when we're in our bridge poses. So you might like this inner leg dynamic. It's up to you. I'm going to use a ball under my right knee, and so then that gives a little buoyancy to the joint. And then for here, we're going to twist first. So I'm going to turn to the right. I got my left foot trying to turn in, likes to do its own thing. So I'm trying to keep the heel pushing out like the heel is scrubbing the floor, okay? And then when I turn right, finding any prop I need under my hand, blanket or add a block, and twist to the right. Now, if you don't need the block, don't use it, right? Take the props that are helpful, and then when you rotate, serve your spine, that rotation, as much in the mid-back or the mid-span as possible. Keep in mind that is the part of the vertebral column that is responsible for the connection into the lungs. So I want to really heighten that circulation in my ribs. Doesn't mean I have to get taller, but it doesn't hurt to sit upright, does it? Well, sometimes it feels difficult, but you know, you get the idea. Now from that spin to the right, feel even if there's a tiny kind of path of your belly that has turned right. Okay, and now the right hand to the side of the back, left hand reaches to my block, and I'm going to easily slide it down. If I can land on my block with my elbow, I prefer this, but this might be a deep pull for you in your back. So you could take the block height up, lean into it, right? You can find the height that works for you. But when I guide my weight down to my left thigh, turn the ribs to the right side, lengthen the torso, right arm, as it reaches to the ceiling, feel when it surfaces to motion up, right, as if that's its final capacity, and then feel what's different when you lean into it and your arm kind of soars over the side of your face. Right, so the capacity is, it's a little bit limitless in this position, isn't it? There's always further to go. So accepting, maybe turn your gaze down to your left arm, but feature that reach through the right side, okay? Yeah, noticing how the awareness motions through your ribs. This is a good one. Some of you may want to use a belt instead, so if you want to take a moment to get your left knee bending, put your belt under your left foot, giving options. Keep where you are with the block if you like, or use the belt under your foot, and then lean into it. Yeah, there's something to be said for each of these. That's supportive, isn't there? And now when we lower that right arm down, we feel that right side of the waist stretching. And as I guide up, okay, we're going to slide that left foot, bottom of the foot down. So I've guided it in so that my, some of you might have the right foot, so it's on the inside of the left foot. Some, the right foot might be back from the left foot. You know, it depends on your range of motion, right, in your hip joint to start when you're seated on your bolster. So when you twist here to your left, your right elbow outside the left leg, feel the elbow try to hook and wring it out and twist, okay? Try to feel the elbow press. This isn't easy, right? It's that kind of lower guttural rotation. It's a little queasy to get into, but you position your body. I mean, yoga is like, it's pretty old school medicine, right, for the body, as far as taking parts and twisting and wringing out and hydrating and circulating. It's very fundamental stuff. But when you do that motion, try to keep very simple where it's felt through the tummy, right? And if you're visiting the second twist variation, it's nice to compare. So for instance, I'm going to try the other variation. I'm moving the ball away from under my right knee, letting the right thigh lower down, hold the left shin, cross the leg over the right. Yeah, I get a little compact here with my legs, so they're really crisscrossing over each other. Come back to the elbow to the left leg and twist. It's much deeper, right? In some ways, it's a fuller rotation, right? But your work here is on sitting upright, right? Sitting up tall. So try to find that inner awareness of lifting, that inner lift. Even if you have to visualize, so silly, right? Hand holding you up on a pedestal, anything that would be supportive of the spinal column lifting. Breathe through nose, out of mouth. If your head is really turning itself, come back to center, unwind, left foot forward of right knee, change the sand to the left thigh, and let's take a simple forward bend. Okay, so we got a couple blocks. And when you use your support with your blocks under hand, you know, try to kind of push yourself back on the bolster a little bit, like you're not quite dropping off the other side, but you really are using it as a ledge, aren't you? Like it's a seat, like a chair, right? You're going to use that under your rear. And when you lean forward, your hands are stretching with the block. So I would take it to the maximum lane of length in both sides of your back waist. All right, so we're starting to work our way soon enough into Viparita Karani, into legs up, right, inverted pathway. So you want to feel this back space behind the ribs to have some extension. So feel your degree of motion. Feel your weight of your brain down. If you can't distinguish the weight of your brain in your practice, that's, I think, something to notice when you're in seated poses, all seated poses and all side stretches. On your back, most of the time you let your weight of your head go instinctively, but here, use the weight of your head to stretch your neck. Now slide the blocks in and let's enjoy when we move ourselves to center seat. Take your feet forward, kind of on a, shake them out, right? They could use a little bit of rattling around. So you might tap on the legs, do a little bit of tapotement, so it's a palm tap, side of the legs. You could do a little bit of fists, a little bit of slaps at the back of your hand. Okay. So now as we move ourselves onto our backs, what we're going to do is soften through the low back, and we're going to focus on the rule of the ribs here in our legs up, okay? So what you want is to have some of your ribs feeling like they are on the bolster, not just your pelvis. So take a blanket to the side. Oops. And then take your other blanket so it's all the way to the back across your mat, okay? All right, let's go here. So we're gonna lower back, and when we're on our reclining state of support with our bolster, first pattern here is to bring the right knee into the chest and let the left leg flow straight down. Keep it simple. And kind of feel what part of your pelvis, all of it should be on that bolster, but feel that you have a couple ribs on it as well. It could be 2 or 3. If you're short, it's probably going to be at least 3. You might even feel like the bolster is kind of underneath your whole back nearly. Switch sides. Left leg draws in, right leg stretches down. Okay, I want you to alternate these knee to chesters. We'll call these knee to chesters. And you might use a block at the back of the leg when you pull it in. So when I have my leg in, you can choose to have the block right behind, so it's at the hamstring zone. And that gives a little bit more definition. You could work on straightening out that leg. Yeah, and so play with this for a few moments. So it's a little bit of free play before we get our legs both up with sand on the feet. So feel the fundamental nature of sampling how to get sensation through the back of the legs and actually invert the leg, right? So we're reversing the flow of gravity in the hamstrings. Although you probably sense that maybe it doesn't affect your range of motion if you're upside down stretching your hamstring or if you're standing and forward folding, but likely one or the other is easier for you, I think. And that is also really true with twists too. So when we're on our back, these hamstring poses might be a little easier to get to. And so when you bring both knees into your chest, you're going to add your sand. And get the sandbag, kind of wrestle with it. You might put it on the belly, get it even. And then when you rise the sandbag up, right, you're going to place it to the bottoms of the feet. And it is quite useful to have that sand even when you get it up there. So if it's not quite right, take a break, bring it down, push into your sandbag till you're satisfied with your calves. Sometimes you can break sand on your shins and it evens up, okay? So feel when the push-up happens and the blend of muscle and flexibility. It should feel like a perfect blend. It's like a 50-50 right here. And then it kind of vanishes into one or the other, and it's an inversion. Right? You don't vanish, but the factors of what you're psychologically focusing on just might. And then as you flex your feet, move out your elbows. If you have a second sandbag, you could add it across your ribs. You could also add your other blanket. Not if you're, doesn't have anything to do with being warm or cold, but it's a little bit of weight. It's a few pounds of weight. So you choose. But elbows are open, hands are back from the elbows. Okay, and let the eyes center in, closing from top to bottom. Feel the movement of the belly with the breath. Practicing the bolster so you feel it near a couple ribs, might just be a couple. Strengthening the back. Now feeling the legs, the knees and their separation, can you start to soften your awareness with your feet so they're neither focusing on flexing nor pushing up into the sand. But as you bend through your knees, you'll feel that spacing of the knees. Avoid letting them move out farther or touching them together. See if you can capitalize on the balance they have right now. And once you target the knees closer to your collarbones, and they have to push outwards, push straight up with your feet, assuming it's feet, okay? Bend your knees, do some leg presses here, push straight up. Yeah, and you might be able to go further than that. You might find, wait a minute, that's not a real leg press. Maybe you can bring your knees closer towards your armpits and then push up. So you'll feel more of the whole back of the leg muscle working both on stretching it, right, and then contracting, pushing up. So this is where we get into, it's a twist and turn in the practice. It's not a literal twist, but that could be interpreted in a lot of ways, huh? But when we do switch, I want you to notice this back line of the legs and the importance here in the patterns that we do from this pose into the next set. So start to bend through your knees so it's pretty easy. Easy setting. If you can move your sand, either toss it overhead or craft your hands to touch and move the feet down. And then set the sand to the side. And as you lower down, I want you to have your feet off of the floor to start. And hands are stretching out the arms open. Knees swish side to side. Noticing when the knees swish with a bolster under the pelvis. A little more massage through the pelvis and the back together. Okay, now as you move your body back into center, hands on the bolster, squeeze the knees to the chest, and then push your bolster forwards. Set your feet on top. And then as your feet are on your bolster, I want you to grab the ball or block if you have only one option, use the block. But if you have the ball, use that between the knees and squeeze into it. Yeah, could be pure adductor work. You know, inner thigh, pelvic floor, strengthening, or you could say toning, right? So squeezing, releasing, okay, kind of basic stuff. But when we have the ball center and we don't spend energy squeezing it right now, but it's a separator, just gives some spacing. It's a spacer. Now I'm going to push down to the feet. And then as I start to lift up my hips, I'm going to slide this blanket away. You don't have to. If it feels better with the blanket, keep it under your head. But as you start to lift up, I want you to get a feel for how the thigh muscles communicate with the idea of the ball between them. So do they have to push in? Can you keep reaching up as if you're trying to get the front of your hip bones to lengthen, right? It's like a piece of cloth that you want this to lengthen. I mean, the best you could do right now is probably move your pant leg a little bit, but to actually get this skin to move is a whole nother experience, right? Okay, get a block. Where did it go? Add it underneath the back of your pelvis. Okay, so have your block so that it is set and it's supporting at the mid to low height. It doesn't have to be this high up, but if you can go mid-height, go mid-height. And then you'll feel the hinge at the hips back. They go to their degree of lift is now shortened. So think of this block as like a landing pad, so it's not going to be as tough for you to go through this. It's something that you can rest on in between. Okay. So now get a belt. Okay. I'm going to reach the belt so it's below my block, the block that's under my sacrum, or you can say back, your pelvis is pretty good. So I'm going to hold this belt. Now this is important. So I have my belt under my tush, basically in front of my block. I'm going to hold the belt so the palms are towards the ceiling. See, that's the palms are open. Yeah. Try to do this work correctly. If it's challenging and you can't get you lift up your bones, it's just a struggle, then just do less. Don't spend energy on working your way to get to the, I mean, we can't see you do this, but trying to prove yourself, because you might injure or you're not really getting the connective tissue in the right circulatory pattern that we're looking for. So do the basics. So I hold the belt and it's pretty stiff. I'm going to pull on the belt because it's not a Dynaband. It doesn't move with it. It's not a rubber band material. So I'm going to roll the shoulders back, although that's a good idea if you want to use one of those. Pull with the hands and feel kind of this obnoxiousness through the ribs, right? It's lifting. Now push down into feet. Lift up the hips. Lift, 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 lift. Feel the buttocks squeeze like you're holding a dime between them. Maybe a quarter. Quarter is a little more substantial. But when you are pushing in your feet, the ball center might be a little looser hold. Okay. Now try to keep the headlights of the hips up, 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 up. Pelvic floor. Now as you lower back to the block, hopefully it was in the right spot for you, or you can kind of move your hips till it gets there. Okay. Feel there. Now we use just the block. Okay. You have the belt. Lift up the feet off the bolster. Knees up, knees are us. And then the legs follow to lift up. The feet lift up. Yeah, so try to keep that ball so you're squeezing into it. Now you don't have a blanket most likely under your head, so it's all a little more challenging. We're just building up, even though we're on the final sweep here. So feel when you push into that ball, feel the shoulders. I know this hand hold on the belt can get a little bit challenging, or you just kind of let it go and you don't work with it anymore. So try to stay with the discipline of holding the belt and working the shoulders under, right? So I'm trying to really puff open my chest. Puff and chest, okay. Now, as I squeeze that ball, there's too many exercises going on at once here. You're gonna bend through the knees. Okay, you can't really get rid of the ball yet. You're stuck with your belt on your hands, huh? So try to co-regulate this when you lower your feet down. Feel the bottoms of the feet. It's almost like very calming to go from one to the next here. For me, now when the ribs are open, now try to push down and scoop under with your tailbone and lift up the hips so the front of the thighs really, really do open. It's training, right? It's certainly core training. Okay, now we're going to move the block away. I want you to use your belt, so you're going to slide it out from underneath. I'm going to try to keep my hips up just for this pure toning. Bring the belt overhead, okay? Lower your spine down. Oh, that feels nice. Okay, so keep the ball. Now push down to your feet. Inhale, hips up. Exhale, move the belt towards the ceiling, straight up towards the ceiling, and lower the spine down. Try to keep the belt held a little wider than shoulder width apart towards the ceiling. Inhale, arms go overhead, hips go up. Exhale, spine down, hands holding belt up towards the ceiling. 2 more. Reach overhead, hips up. If it seems to be going pretty well, it's not an exhausting exercise. It's fairly common, right, for working with the core, the lower back care, pelvic floor health, common. But we're doing some common exercises for self-care in those regions. Okay, now when you lower your spine down, you may know about them but not practice them. Okay. Now as I draw the knees in, I'm going to move the ball aside. Okay. I want you to take the belt under your right foot, let the left leg rest on the bolster. I think it should be under your knee pretty much. Comfortable, pretty easy going, huh? On that one. Now, when I hold onto the belt together with my right hand, I'm going to slide the left foot up on the bolster and then let the knee relax open. Now, if this is really intense in your hip, there's a block over there. What you could do is tilt the block up onto the bolster so it's a little easier perch for your leg muscles, right? This is much more comfortable for me. Then position your right leg out. Now, if that's not comfortable, well, actually, if it's too comfortable and you want more stretch, you could move the block away, right? So feel the inner thigh intensity. It's a deep stretch. It's okay to feel a deep adductor stretch. So if you want to protect so it's less, you can put the block under, or a towel, or a blanket. Come back through center. I want you to keep it real pure and simple. Switch sides, left foot up, right foot down, right knee positions and moves open. Remember, block is helpful. You might like to have that additional support, right, for traction. And then left leg goes out. Now try to keep the leg bones moving out from the pelvic floor versus trying to tug it back overhead or move it too far downstream, so that the back of your pelvis is even. If you're starting to roll a little into the leg that you're stretching open, like you can't quite stay centered, you can do a few things. You can put a sandbag across your navel space, right? So the abdominal space, that would be helpful too. Okay. Foot in your screen. Now come back up with that left thigh. Take the belt off your foot, lower down the left foot, and then as your block is shifted out, you're simply going to windshield wiper the knees side to side. So keep it easy. Feet about hips distance for right now on the bolster. Knees are going to swivel, and you want to find the most comfortable motion for your rib section. So I would let your body roll a little bit, not be too programmed to continue ways of learning that are in some ways stiffening, like you look for the direction and you try to follow it, but not have your own signature to it. So feel the body releasing. Right? What's releasing for you? Is it a certain sound along with your pose? And directionally, you might be challenged directionally where we're going with it, but it'll all come together. I'll try to be the facilitator. Okay. Me and Mindy here, she's already in her Shavasana. She's a PhD in Shavasana. Okay, so now we're going to shift big time. We're going to move our bolster to the right side of our mat. I want you to push it over. Okay, so it's on the right side. When you stretch let's take this one first. Let's bring our left leg over the right leg. Knees to the left. Okay, so there is a sensation through the right thigh that you might feel in the IT band on this right leg when you cross the legs over to the left. You can stuff in a block under the left leg. I want you to feel like your knee has got to overdo it, but feel where this right side hip stretches. Feel pretty deep. Right side hip. Okay, now when you come back in center, bring the left foot to the right knee, lift up the right heel, and then spine pressing. Use your tummy muscles like you're about ready to do an abdominal crunch. So your spine presses down, your brain stays down. Put a blanket under your head, okay? Be a little more supported that way. And then hold under the right leg and squeeze the legs towards you. Could be hands under the leg or under the right knee. So under right thigh or under right knee. But really get that squeeze into the left hip. Okay. Spine length. Breathe slow. Now, when we start that warm up into the left hip, we're going to add some sand to it. So what we'll do is lower down, release the clasp, lower the foot down, and then slide down through that right foot and cross the left leg over. It's on the bolster, okay? So now this bolster height for me feels, it's sufficient, but I might enjoy to have a little bit more on top of the bolster, so I'm going to add the blanket for right now, okay? So feel that exchange of the right leg straight-ish, the left leg cross over, okay? And then add your sand across the outer left thigh, okay? So get that feeling of support. If you have the ball, I want you to use that to the sacrum. Okay, so there's no right or left side of the sacrum on this one. It's just put the ball to that above the buttocks, right? Very lowest part of your back that curves into the rear. And then the left arm fans open the ribs. So feel the ribs kind of fan out. And then let your eyes release in and your brain twist a little to the left, okay? So when the mind has its ability to center in the reclining poses, you might feel pretty comfortable with your right knee bending. You might prefer it straight. Feel what little influences those have in the opposite hip. And when both arms move open to what's proper for your circulation, feel where your head turns and let your eyes center in for a few. Feeling the condition of your spine, if it moves with the breath, or if the breath is primarily in the ribs, expanding and contracting. Just notice where the mobility is the best, that you can kind of supervise. You're supervising your inner environment in the practice. So if it's getting a little more calm, that's good. That's what we're going towards. Okay, now notice the exterior left thigh, the stretch there, and then when we come away from the shape, we're going to make an impression on that space without the sand. So we'll move the ball, move the sand, but I want you to be somewhat clever about how you come out of this. So noticing this leg crossing over, and that's it. It's simple. It's crossed over to the bolster. Okay? So when I roll onto my back, what I'm going to do is I notice this left leg is vulnerable. So I'm going to step the foot down next to my right leg, cross the right leg over that left leg, and then knees are going to release over to the right. So that left outer leg that you were supervising the sensation along is pinned and stretched, right? You've heard of pin and stretch. You know, kind of a fundamental way of teaching exercises. One category is pin and stretch. No pins, okay? Only bones that are pinning. So when you feel that connection through that left side, this isn't one we want to hold for very long, and we don't want any sand on it, right? Because it's going to push into the knee joint. So when I roll onto my back and I slide the right foot to the left knee, see how easy it all is? It's all kind of meant to be. All right, left heel up, or just pop the knee, don't pop the knee, but pull the leg in, pop the leg in towards your body. And then hold under thigh first so you can get in there. And then when you're trying to get into the experience, the right elbow jabs on the right leg. The hands could reach under the left knee, sure, but that's only if the knee is okay with it. If you have some history in your left knee and you know better than to kind of push around the bones and hug them together, then you avoid that and hold the back of the leg. Yeah. Either way is fine. Well, one way is better for you. So going into the pose for a few more, scan where you feel the most awareness. It's going to be the final hip pose that we do, right? It's the right hip. So noticing the awareness kind of peaking on the upper inner right thigh, right? You probably feel it there, then it comes around to the outer thigh, to the buttock. So circulation, massage through the hip. If you go slow enough, you might feel like some of it is therapeutic in like a massage context, some of the pieces of the practice. Now we'll lower the foot and we'll take the right foot down just for safety's sake here. I'm going to move my bolster across the mat. I'm going to try to stay on my back to get there and see if I can guide it across. I did okay. So. Okay. So left leg down, right leg crosses over. Okay. So feel when that crossover occurs, holding on, the sand is going to pin the leg much more, right, than your hand would. So you might simply put a sandbag right in the immediate moment in this final stretch and feel where the leg crossed over to the bolster and noticing kind of the high density parts of you that are feeling like they're trying to survive the stretch, right? So sometimes it feels really good. Sometimes there's parts that kind of want to sneak away from the pose. So find the edges of those parts, right? If it's your hip, if it feels kind of clogged up or it's really stiff. I never thought about a clogged up hip, but that's a way to explain them sometimes. So feel if you can adjust your bolster. You can pull it a little higher. You can push it farther out or farther down. It's a great prop to have for this pose, isn't it? Or you could put it on any type of big pillow, couldn't you, or a couch cushion. So open out the right arm and turn your head to the right. Let your eyes rest. Breathe slow. Now feel how you can customize the way that you move into your final pose that's helpful for your back from this position. So you'll feel the right leg has a peaked amount of pressure around the outer leg surface into the joint. So we want to really customize it for our individual self. So my direction to you to get into your final shape might be a little intense. So you might decide, oh, I'm going to stay here. This is good for me. Maybe you decide to go swing your legs up the wall. Maybe you decide to put your bolster and kind of push it so it's under your calves right here. You could be here. And sort your body into relaxation, sand on ribs. You can also roll and come up to sitting and get a couple blocks under your bolster. It's nice to have a bolster bench for a good full minute here at the end, so we create some symmetry in our legs, because they have had quite a bit of kind of wrangling around, wringing out. They felt clogged up. Okay, so I have my bolster bench. And then when I lower onto my back again, I've got my legs resting up on top. And my sand could be on my shins, or if that's not convenient, I put it to my ribs. Right? I'm going to place it where my breathing muscles have to work, and maybe a little bit down from the starting point where we had it high when the ribs were up, so that you can strengthen the diaphragm muscle, right? Your respiratory muscle. So you want to feel like the seat is comfortable. There's a tiny arch in your back naturally dedicated to this position. Feel the heels float, feel the hands release. Kind of relax your emotions and feel the body kind of in summary of this practice today. Whether you felt like it was twists and turns, or if it was rather simple ranges of motion to provide you with some self-care and balance, that's good enough. And then let this be a deep breath in, belly full. Feel the sand if you're using that for weight training. Exhale, feel the belly draw back down, the arch of the spine. And feel that there is an arch in the spine as you exhale. Rest your eyes, belly full, belly soft. Just a moment longer here to even acknowledge the presence of others in your practice, right? We do have a coming together of this live experience, so be willing to acknowledge and feel that support. Now, if your sand is on ribs, move it aside. Feel when the leg bones are working on that angle of the hips. You're going to slide your feet onto the bolster ledge, and then feel the degree of motion in the knee joint when they draw to the chest, and then roll to your side and let your hands bring you up. Use your arms to get yourself to maybe a moment of cross-legged, okay? So hand center and the shoulders roll back. Feel the hands in your lap, feel the shoulders moving, and feel that reaction of spine, and try to deliver the spine focus. So when we have the breath motioning the shoulders back, bring your hands up and bow the head to your heart center. Surrender there. Inhale together and exhale. bowing into the space behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste. Okay.